Morning. Thank you all for attending City and State's 2020 Nassau County Virtual State Legislative Forum. I'm Zach Williams, staff writer at City and State. We got a really great event coming up. Great group of state lawmakers here. A few of them might not be able to make it, including State Senator Anna Kaplan, Jim Gaughran, and Assemblymember Charles Lavine, but we're still going to hope for the best that we can slip them into the discussion later on. But first, I would love to thank our sponsor, AARP, for helping us make this event. We had a similar discussion last week about Suffolk County issues, covered a lot of great issues, and we're hoping to do the same today. So without further ado, I would love to introduce the great Bernard Macias to offer some opening remarks to get the conversation going. He's the Associate State Director for Long Island. In this role, he oversees community outreach, engagement, local member experiences, federal, state, and local advocacy, of course, and directs the island's more than 400 very active AARP volunteers and its membership that's close to 500,000 people all across Long Island. I'll give the clap to welcome Bernard to open up the discussion.
Thank you, Zach. Good morning and welcome to City and State's Nassau County State Legislative Forum, sponsored by AARP New York. Again, I want to thank all of you for joining us today virtually. In a few moments, I'm going to give it right back to Zach Williams of City and State, and he will introduce our special guests. These are your state legislators who represent you and your neighbors from Nassau County and Albany. Zach will introduce each legislator, then launch right into questions so we can carve out as much time as possible to hear their positions, plans, and priorities on issues important to the 50 plus. I want to emphasize that AARP is a nonpartisan organization. We do not contribute to political campaigns. We do not endorse political candidates. The purpose of today's forum is solely to educate our members and our participants on issues of importance so that they are better informed citizens. Now, if we were all gathered together in a big room like we used to, I would ask for a show of hands of how many of you have a loved one in a nursing home, or how many of you care for an older family member or loved one at a home, or take one or more prescription drugs regularly. I would imagine that a lot of hands would be up. Nursing home conditions,
right? Yeah. Doesn't
drug costs are leading issues for AARP. And today we'll be asking our state legislators what they're doing or plan to do about those issues. I want to thank our volunteers and our members from Nassau County who are virtual today in attendance. And I also want to note that they are key to what we do here. That includes, as I know, our state legislators can attest showing up in their red shirts and making sure that our state legislators are aware of and responsive to the needs of the 50 plus. I'm sure they and all our members will be listening carefully and are anxious as we hear from our lawmakers. With that, I want to thank City and State for hosting this forum and turn things over to Zach.
Thanks so much, Bernard. Before we hold the lawmakers' feet to the fire, would just like to congratulate all of you on running some good races, getting reelected. I've had a chance to speak with some of you in my own work, and thanks for all of you who've indulged me in the past with a few questions on one political issue or another. So when I introduce your name, please just raise your hand so our audience can make sure to put a face to the name. We got State Senator John Brooks from District 8 here. We got Edward Ra, Assemblyman for District 19. We got Melissa Miller, Assemblymember for District 20. And hopefully joining us very, very soon is State Senator Kevin Thomas of District 6. So as state lawmakers are gearing up to head back to Albany in January, they'll be making some important decisions about the coronavirus pandemic response, the state budget, and issues that impact your household finances. So I wanted to give a few questions to the lawmakers. Hopefully there'll be some audience questions that we can wrap into the discussion. But without further ado, let's jump right in. So more older New Yorkers are homebound due to the coronavirus, and their family members are working harder than ever to keep them home and healthy. Many of them rely on home and community-based programs funded through the State Office for the Aging, home delivered meals, transportation services, I really would like to know, with so much up in the air with the state budget and the economy, how will you protect these programs from cuts? We'll start things off with Assemblyman Ra.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this. Thank you to AARP. Your members are very, very active in the area, and I always have great conversations about issues with them. The budget situation obviously has a number of components where we're kind of with the presidential election behind us. There is some expectation, certainly, I think, by Governor Cuomo that President-elect Biden would be more willing to give, more unfettered money to the states, which could have certainly an impact, and I think might push some of the conversations a little further out than they would have been. I think many of us expected to be dealing with budget cuts sooner rather than later, but they may go into the new year at this point with that hope out there. But I think, like any year with a budget, it's about priorities. But in particular, the approach has been in the past few months to do kind of an across the board withholding of funds. These aren't permanent cuts, but the impact that they've had on many providers, whether agencies, not-for-profits, have been enormous, and it's having an impact on their ability to provide for some of our most vulnerable New Yorkers. So I think we need to prioritize them, but also I think we need to, we did get some money from the CARES Act that has not gone out the door, and we should be finding ways to utilize that to help those organizations serve people. Doing just an across the board saying, okay, we're going to withhold 20%, I think has an impact of hitting the most vulnerable the hardest. And those organizations that are helping those individuals that were, let's face it, our not-for-profit sector has had a lot of trouble in the last few years, and it just becomes that much harder, and they're trying to do more with less. So I think we have to be smart with how we're allocating the resources the federal government has already given us. We hopefully wait for more, but we also have to, really tighten our belt on a lot of the things that are wants rather than needs, say, as we get into a new budget year.
State Senator Brooks, how are you looking to balance fiscal discipline with the need to keep services flowing to many of your constituents?
Thank you. First, Zach, I also want to join with Ed. Thank you for having this program today. I think it's important that we have an opportunity to discuss with our constituents and just where we are on a number of issues. Obviously, the pandemic has been the lead story all year. It is challenging us in ways almost unimaginable. Where New York State is in a position as other states are, where we can't go into a deficit. The governor is withholding the 20% as a safety valve, if you will, until where we see the federal government is going to go in assistance. At the beginning of the pandemic, the assistance was there. Now the federal government is not showing the leadership it needs to show. And quite honestly, as a result of the failure of the president to lead, in many ways in the start of the pandemic, the governor was setting almost the national agenda for how we are addressing this virus. I think we've got to get the assistance from the federal government. I think what the governor is doing, although painful, is prudent until we understand what the federal government is going to do. This pandemic, unfortunately, back in April, we thought the ceiling was falling, if you will, in terms of the level of activity. Now across the country, we're seeing an outbreak at even a higher level. Yesterday, we crossed 250,000 people in this state have died as a result of this virus. So it is the top issue. We can't really start to plan how we're responding until we know how the federal government's going to assist us in funds. They're taking far too long to make a decision. Quite honestly, the president, it seems totally uninvolved at this point. So I think given where we are, given we're going to go to a change in the White House, we need to let the incoming president start to get the different information that's going. Certainly, the good news is there may well be a vaccine available, but we've got to be planning that distribution. And it seems like the state's left out of that discussion right now, as the incoming administration. So collectively, we have to look at the budget very, very, very closely and set real priorities. But we really can't think about the budget until we know what money we're working with. We know there's many, many shortfalls in the state from a revenue standpoint, and we don't know what the future of this virus is. New York City schools just announced they're going to close tomorrow. We're seeing an uptick in different areas across the state, including here on Long Island. So it's hard to really be clear on what we're going to do when we don't know how much we're going to be working with, and we don't know how much more this virus is going to extend its impact from an educational standpoint, from a jobs standpoint, from restrictions. So I think we're going to have to respond to this almost day to day until there's a clear direction here on what's going to happen from Washington, so we can make some definitive plans.
As a political reporter, I'm often focused on, big issues, billions of dollars. I bet constituents in our audience are really thinking about, things that are small but very important in the grand scheme of things. Assemblywoman Miller, I bet your constituents got all sorts of concerns about the budget. What are the type of, local issues affecting your constituents that are really keeping you up at night?
Well, first, like my colleagues, I would like to thank all of you. Your advocacy is very, very important and very welcome. And I really, truly believe that the best advocates are the people that are living what they're, advocating for. And so, I really appreciate what you all do. I think that what I'm hearing a lot, these cuts, but let's be honest, historically, year after year, the senior population and their needs have just not been a priority in this state. There's always looming cuts. We're always worrying about, how are we going to fund this? There's just never enough. I think, as Ed suggested, we really need to take a look at how we prioritize caring for our seniors in this state and making sure that they have the resources to keep them at home if they want to be, keep them as independent as possible. I hear a lot of that they just aren't able to access things that they need. I know with my own mom, my mom is 82 years old, lives at home. She has Alzheimer's, and we're having a terrible time trying to get care in place for her. I could not even get her Meals on Wheels. It was in the midst of the transition from the county to the long-term managed care, who's funding it. I mean, and if I'm experiencing that, what is the regular consumer experiencing? So I hear a lot of the difficulty even accessing any of the care that's out there. So I just, it's important to me that we prioritize where the money that is available is spent, because I feel too often that it shortchanges the most vulnerable people, the seniors and the disabled.
So I want to give you all just one more chance to really, highlight one hyper-local issue that you think is particularly important to maintain funding for in the upcoming budget. Let's try to just go fast and quick. Assemblywoman Miller, you mentioned Meals on Wheels, hunger programs. Is there one other issue you like to highlight super quick?
I think due to COVID, so many seniors are afraid to go out. They are afraid to go into the stores to get what they need. They're afraid to go out to eat. They're afraid to socialize. They haven't even seen their own family. So I worry, and I hear a lot about, are they able to get what they need? If they're not feeling well, can they get to their doctor? My mom is not capable of setting up and doing a televisit or any of the things that we're all getting used to doing. So I worry terribly about the people that are stuck at home. And separately, there's the whole nursing home issue, which I'm sure we'll get to after. But
oh yeah, so we got transportation there. That's a big one. Assemblyman Ra, just a sentence or two. What's a big issue on your radar?
I think transportation definitely. I've had some folks call my office who normally had access to transportation to take them to a doctor's appointment or whatnot, and because of the situation, you know, it's much more restrictive and much more difficult to get. We've had to try to get creative to find ways to get them to appointments. So I think that's certainly an important one, as well as just getting them whatever other resources, you know, by those same channels, food, you know, medicine, things like that.
So we got transportation, food programs. Senator Brooks, super quick.
Sure. First, I think we got to make sure that they are getting a food supply. I think many of them are making sacrifices. We need to make sure medications are made available, and we need to make sure over the longer run there's affordable housing available to them.
Excellent. You win the award for brevity there, Senator. Luckily, we got a real expert, somebody who's really listening to seniors, Kristen McManus. Give me a bit of an overview of some of these issues that you think you know, we need to prioritize in the upcoming budget process.
Sure. Thanks, Zach. And I do want to thank all our legislators for taking the time today to speak with us and to speak directly with their constituents that are watching. And I really do appreciate what all of you are saying. These are exactly the services that we've been pushing for. And I will thank you, because 2 years ago, we did get a historic investment in SOFA to go towards these kind of programs with home delivered meals, transportation. What we're really seeing now, these programs are more important than ever. We're trying to keep our older loved ones at home as much as possible for their own health and safety. And these are really programs that do keep people at home, help them stay at home, but also very low cost in comparison to some of the other big ticket items that we see in the budget. And it's been shown to save us money in the Medicaid program from delaying people going into often taxpayer funded institutions. So I really do want to thank the legislators for recognizing how important these programs are. And we are realistic about our budget situation this year, but I do think that this needs to be a priority. These are our most vulnerable and most susceptible populations. It's incredibly crucial that we have these services to keep them safe at home.
So many seniors are on fixed incomes. You know, pocketbook issues obviously are very important for seniors. I think somebody mentioned prescription drugs. I think that was you, Senator. You know, so much comes down to how much aid can come from the federal government, but there's a lot the state can do too to help seniors better access prescription drugs. What are a few ideas that you see as particularly important moving forward, Senator? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah,
there we go.
Sorry about that. I have a tendency of doing that, so you have to get used to that. I think we really have to take a good hard look at what's happening with regards to these prescriptions. Try to enter into large buying contracts if we can to make stuff more available. You know, our whole healthcare right now is in question, as we know. We've got a case before the Supreme Court. Many different options that are being discussed as to what we do with health. We really have to drill down, and particularly when we consider our seniors and that whole area. Many of them are on fixed incomes, obviously. Most of them are on various types of medication. And obviously, as we get older, we have different kinds of health challenges. So I think we all recognize the session that we're coming to an end. The virus took it over, and it was not a normal session last year, and many issues couldn't be addressed. Unfortunately, at least at the start of the session, we're still going to be dealing with the virus, but we really do have to focus on medication, healthcare, long-term planning. As we realize, many people are dealing with disabilities, with dementia or Alzheimer's. We're seeing a significant increase, and that's affecting, in particular, our older community. So we're going to have to establish a lot of new priorities this year as we reevaluate how the world has changed in the last 2 years. And I think certainly for the folks online right now, I know all of them are very, very aware of what's happening here on Long Island and the concerns. And I think we're going to see a legislature that's going to work collectively to address these problems in the next session.
Well, it looks like we got Assemblymember Judy Griffin on the line from District 21, and there we go. We're going to throw you right into the deep end of our conversation. We're talking prescription drugs, so many seniors on fixed income. How can we help them out on this front at the state level?
Yeah, well, there obviously is a lot we need to do for our seniors. You know, they're extremely vulnerable population, and of course now even more vulnerable because they're at the highest risk for COVID, and you know they're in the worst, you know, the worst shape. If they, you know, do get COVID, they're at higher risk as well. So, you know, a lot of different plans, like again, like some things that Senator Brooks said, you know, we got caught short in our session last time. So there's a lot of work we have to do, and different programs to make available are, you know, definitely making, like there's the EPIC program, which provides insurance for seniors. So we have to, you know, look at that, see if that is you know, helpful. Is there something more we need to do there? You know, look at all the eligible plans, like for Medicare Part D, what seniors maybe have been not considered eligible, and are the ones that are eligible, is that actually covering their costs? So there's things that we need to really find out if they are being helped with some of the existing plans, and then if we need to enhance existing plans or increase who can qualify to be in those plans. There's like plans about express prescriptions and that type of thing. So again, we just have to look at that, where there's discounts that can be offered, where there's plans for medicine that can provide it to seniors at a cheaper basis. And you know, we just have to really, like, you know, multi-prong approach and look at the many needs, and then the many ways our state legislature can pass laws that can expand the opportunity for seniors to qualify, and also perhaps in many cases add on to programs, and, you know, make sure that we're accomplishing what our goals are, is to keep seniors cared for and taken care of and have access to medical attention and medical and pharmaceuticals that they need.
You know, prescription drugs are one of those issues where I think there's a lot of agreement between Democrats and Republicans. And I'm glad Assemblyman Ra looks like he wants to jump in here, because I think there's few people in Albany who spend more time literally talking about policy as this guy does on the Assembly floor. But you wanted to jump in and say some, Assemblyman?
Well, I just wanted to mention something. You know, my colleagues mentioned a lot of the programs we have, which obviously maintaining them is essential. But one of the big issues as it relates to prescription drugs the last couple of sessions has been regulating PBMs, or the pharmacy benefit managers, which serve as kind of the middleman. And, you know, there is not a ton of transparency. There was a bill that got through the legislature last year and was vetoed. So I think that, you know, maybe as an example of kind of what Senator Brooks said, like COVID really took over the session, and some of the things that maybe we were looking at last fall as priorities from this year kind of took a back seat. So I think transparency and regulation in that area certainly could help. I know our independent pharmacies, which you know, have great relationships with our senior communities, and you know, and our, you know, counsel individuals, and they come in to fill prescriptions, are very concerned with the transparency in that area that is really causing them to struggle to be able to you know, fill prescriptions affordably.
So I just want to make sure everyone in our audience knows about PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, I've written a little bit about it. It's kind of, imagine the world of pharmaceuticals has three little kingdoms. You got the pharmacies, you got the manufacturers, and you got the insurance companies. And then you got these PBMs who are the, kind of the people that are bringing the prescription drugs to the pharmacies. Assemblymember Miller, I saw you nodding as Assemblyman Ra was talking. What can we do to make sure that these PBMs aren't driving up prescription drug costs for seniors?
Well, that's just the thing. They're claiming that they're they're giving you access to the lowest cost because they're doing the negotiating, but there is no transparency whatsoever. Unlike your regular pharmacist who has a ton of, regulations and how they negotiate a cost, or, the PBMs are, separate from that. And they are driving the small pharmacies out of business. So many of our small pharmacies are losing money on prescriptions and they have relationships with these people. They have relationships with their seniors who come in every month for all their prescriptions, and they don't want to say, you have to pay more for this. A lot of them are just eating that difference. And as both Ed and John said, COVID took over, and this was a big priority last session. The governor vetoed, even though we all unanimously passed that PBM regulation bill, the governor vetoed it. This was something that we were really ready to address last session and never got to. And now what we're going to see is the COVID secondary effects, all of the, effects that we're now facing with our senior population, with our children, with our disabled. Everybody's having these secondary fallouts that are going to be probably prominent in session this year. So I think this is a perfect example of something that needs to absolutely be addressed, this session.
You raised a really interesting point, Assemblymember, that this PBM reform bill passed, I believe, unanimously, or pretty close to it in both houses. The governor vetoed it. The details are very, very complicated. Anyone can call Assemblymember Dick Godfrey if they really want a crash course in it. But, this isn't the only bill that I think affects seniors where we've seen lawmakers pass it unanimously, the governor vetoes it, and then we just don't really know what kind of happens from there. Is the time come for lawmakers to get a little bit more aggressive about this PBM issue?
We were ready to last session. We one of the first weeks of session, the pharmacists were up there in Albany. We stood with them. We were ready to get this through and make it happen. And, you all know what happened.
Well, I'm gonna throw it to the senator for just a moment, because the Senate Democrats are having a moment. Looks like you guys might get that supermajority after all. Any thoughts on holding the governor's feet to the fire a little bit more on this issue?
Yeah, I think certainly when we're talking about the prescriptions, it actually is a life and death issue. And I think that we have to make sure that the drugs that are needed, the prescriptions that are needed by our seniors, are available at the lowest possible cost across the state. And I want to believe right now that all collectively, all the branches will come together and ensure that happens. If not, then we'll do what needs to be done. But this is very serious business, particularly where the economy the way it is, where people have limited financial resources and they're making decisions. We don't want to be making a decision between whether they can get their drugs or get the food they need or whatever. As Missy said, many of the local pharmacists are taking a hit to help people. They shouldn't have to do that either. So I think this is one of those issues that we need to resolve early. I think we're going to send a uniform message across the board, and we're going to protect the seniors and make sure they have access to the drugs they need at an affordable rate.
Kristen, maybe, you wanted to jump in, Assemblywoman?
What people don't realize with these PBMs, they have way too much control, and they're controlling not only the cost, where they're the ones making all of the money, but in many cases, they have their own medical directors. and their medical directors are deciding which medication they want a patient on. Even if a doctor prescribes a different medication, they'll decide, no, you know what, we'd rather them take this medication, whatever their negotiations are going to, yield them the most profit. It's really, that's why we're demanding this transparency, because the people that are on the hitting, line from this are the patients. The small pharmacies for sure, because they're being knocked out of the equation. They can't afford to supply these meds to patients, but it's the patients ultimately who are getting hurt, because you have somebody a medical director who doesn't even know a thing about a patient, ultimately deciding whether they should take that medicine that the doctor prescribed or not.
I'm sitting here, I'm a millennial, I'm here in Brooklyn, scared to death that my internet is going to cut out. And, internet isn't free either. Even though, I'm doing a bit better than probably many other people out there. I can't imagine what it's like for some of those vulnerable seniors. And broadband is not just, prescriptions and broadband aren't just an issue for upstate, especially with broadband. Broadband's a big issue here in Long Island. And Kristen, I was hoping you could give me a little bit of perspective on how these two issues, especially when it comes to affordability, really relate to each other, prescriptions and broadband access for seniors.
Sure. Thanks, Zach. It really is all about, as you said, their common pocketbook issues. And I thank Senator Brooks for bringing up the point that we really cannot have people choosing between food and medication. We've polled our members and found that the most common reason that they are skipping medications is because they can't afford it. These medications are great, but they don't work if people can't afford to take them. And we see it really both as a healthcare issue for prescription drugs, obviously, but when we talk about broadband specifically in the world that we live in today, it really does so much to help with social isolation when people can do these virtual visits or, talk to their family members virtually, but also open up access to telehealth so that people can continue to have these check-ins with their doctor without having to put themselves at risk and leave their homes. So really what we need is to make sure that the state's broadband, that everybody is covered. We have a bill that was passed, and thank you to the legislators on the panel, that would ask the State Public Service Commission to really look into where broadband is available and make recommendations to make our broadband stronger so that everybody has access to high-speed internet. And we're waiting for that to be passed by the governor. But again, this is also, an issue of affordability. So in some places you may have access to high-speed internet, but not be able to afford it. So I just thank all of our legislators on the panel, because I know that this has been a real priority issue for them as well.
But what can we do about it? Who wants to jump in on that? How can we make broadband more accessible? I think some of you were mentioning how important it is in terms of this access issue, telehealth, et cetera.
Sure. It's something that we obviously have in the last few months heard a lot about from the perspective of school age children, but certainly it's, for seniors as well, whether, as Kristen said, telehealth, has become a major thing. Like I know my grandmother I was over there last weekend to visit with her, and she had her first telehealth appointment with her doctor that my aunt, set up, and she talked to the doctor, and it's something that is new to a lot of people, and if you don't have the bandwidth to do it, it doesn't work. So I think there are some pieces of this that relate to something that is not uncommon on places like Long Island, and it's dealing with all the different governmental entities. Permitting processes and things like that. That is certainly a part of this. And as we know, there's been different types of proposals in budgets in recent years relating to that. And you're always trying to balance that like local control issue versus access issues. So I think there is a piece of it that relates to trying to work together to piece the infrastructure together.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think it's so important to see what the Public Service Commission can rule on this, like can say to companies that we need to provide this access. All companies that provide this access do make a lot of money, and I think it would be really appropriate if there are people of low income and low means that can't afford it or don't have access to it, that we make that available. And as Assemblymember Ra said, in our schools, there are different schools where children don't have access. And now all of a sudden that we have so many kids learning hybrid and online, there are families that don't have that access. And then, you know, maybe they can't get to a library. And I know some districts have made broadband more accessible. I know district can afford that, and not every district is able to. And a lot of our seniors, of course, are home alone, isolated from their families. And sometimes even if they have internet, you know, they need help even figuring out how to run it. But we have a senior center here in Rockville Center that developed a really impressive program of exercise, fitness, cooking, and they have, because they meet every day at the Sandell Center, but because of COVID, they don't. So they delivered this program online. They went completely online, and we have a cable channel in Rockville Center, like a lot of the local villages have that. And these seniors have really been thriving because they've had that connection. They're doing exercise, they're learning about things. And one of the missions that the Sandell Center has that I'm trying to help them with and with my office is having our local, you know, online Optimum or Altice or whoever help broaden that and bring that to more seniors, because there are too many seniors that we have sitting home alone with maybe family members can't get in touch, maybe they live far away and they're isolated, and or they're in nursing home and they're isolated, and their program really can bring it home to so many people. And they don't want any they're not trying to make any profit. They just think their program has really been successful and they would like to deliver it, but we need the help of the industry to come up and say, all right, you know, we're going to provide this. And I think that with the Public Service Commission, with Governor Cuomo's help, with you know, I don't know if there's a specific legislation we could do, but I think there's a lot of different ways that we could provide this universal access to everyone. No one should be left out of that.
I'd also like to just add, you know, I think that just like food, or, you know, Ed said before, it's a matter of, you know, we have to have a conversation about needs versus wants, or maybe, you know, broadband at this point becomes more of a need than a want, and make it, you know, more of in the priority category if it's going to, you know, be able to be what connects the seniors to the world. And I know Altice in the spring, when this all started, they were offering a lot of free internet, trying to just give access to the children, to the, you know, so there are companies that are doing that, but maybe if funding wise, this you know, can move into more of the priority need category for those seniors that are really isolated and don't have, you know, the money or, you know, the ability to bring broadband in for themselves.
That's a really interesting idea. There's been so much discussion about how internet, like electricity and gas, you know, isn't something you can survive without, at least not in, you know, a first world country like the United States. You know, we've seen so much with utilities on Long Island, so many different things, you know, whether it's broadband, electricity, gas, you know, what do we need to do to make sure that seniors don't have their services cut off beyond just this shut off moratorium that the governor signed before?
I think that the PSC definitely needs to step up their game. There needs to be a lot more, you know, regulation of the utilities. And the special needs community, you know, each utility has their special needs list. Seniors are individuals that quite often have special needs. They should be considered specially. I know when the electric goes out, when we had that storm, my mom lives alone. Her electricity was out. We were, terribly worried. We had to run over, and she won't leave her house. She's, very stubborn. So if she were if there were a senior priority list, like there is a medical frailty priority list, doing something that could identify these seniors so that they would get first attention.
Zach, if I can just quickly jump in here, because there was a recent Newsday story that we have millions of utility customers on Long Island that are in arrears. And we are very concerned about what will happen. Will people face terminations? Will they get shutoffs? We've been working with the county executives to encourage them to work with the utilities and make sure that we're taking full advantage of whatever kind of rates or discounts or programs are available for low-income consumers. I'll also remind everybody here that HEAP applications are open. If you do have issues paying your utility bill, there may be help available to you. But more broadly, we really do need a utility industry, a public service commission that is more friendly to consumers. The governor did recently just appoint a specific consumer representative, and we're very hopeful and look forward to working with him. But quite frankly, this is really an issue that we've been putting a spotlight on for years. For many consumers, they feel like they just have no say, and their utility bills keep going up and up. And these are essential services. People need heat, they need electricity, especially now to be able to stay in their homes.
I think clearly we all recognize that, and I think between the pandemic and the most recent storm, a lot of our vulnerabilities were exposed clearly. We recognize the economic impact of this pandemic, what's happening. And I think we have to put in place long-range payment plans, not to cut somebody's power off, but give them an extended period of time at an affordable rate to be put back on schedule, if you will, in terms of the payments. I wanted to add on the discussion with the broadband. I think one of the things we may want to consider is a bond act to help fund and so that across this state, from an educational standpoint, from service to our seniors, from the support of medical treatment programs and doctor visits, that we ensure all across the state, all areas of the state have absolute access to the broadband. We certainly learned in the pandemic, we weren't ready for distance learning. Many of the schools have problems both with the internet and access to the computers. I think too, in terms of what we're talking about now, we've got to recognize the Public Service Commission's job has to be to manage our various utilities with the public's interest as a top priority. And that means that when people are having financial difficulties, we arrange payment plans. That means if we see something happening in somebody's utilization of the utilities where it appears wasteful or something else, we go in and we help them make an adjustment to what they're doing. And I think the performance that we've seen here on Long Island with some of the utilities, it's clear that the Public Service Commission has to make a change in events here, and public protection, public service becomes a top priority. We can't have situations where utilities are guaranteed to make profits regardless of what they do. The discussions that I've had with one of the water companies here, and we had a profit, and we had a profit, and we had a profit. You don't have to get a profit. Certain requirements that they have are have to do with the operation. There's no profit there. If you're going to fix a pipe that broke, for example, that shouldn't make a profit. Your responsibility is to maintain the infrastructure, so that shouldn't make a profit. But I think this past year, between the economic challenges, between the storm challenges, a lot of a lot of problems have shown themselves, and I think we have to be addressing a lot of that in this next session of the legislature.
You know, it's a perfect setup for, I think, one of the biggest questions I had for all of you today, which is, you know, from judging by your comments, sounds like everybody really shares this hope that if there's any silver lining to this enormous public health disaster, it's that we finally have a chance to collectively solve a lot of these long-standing issues, you know, whether it's broadband, prescriptions, the budget, whatever it is. And I think that applies no less to nursing homes, you know, which have borne the brunt of this crisis. I think Assemblyman Ra was mentioning education and how broadband has shown the shortcomings or the pandemic has shown the shortcomings of our broadband access. And we've heard a lot from the governor and lawmakers about reimagining education for the 21st century. What can we do to that point with nursing homes?
It's a good question, and we need to, you know, number one, we need to learn from a lot of what went on, both in terms of staffing, resources, and how you care for and protect the patients, you know, in a situation like this. Obviously, a lot of the talk has been about, you know, the agency's order that, you know, had patients going back, COVID positive patients going back into the nursing homes and the impact of that. You know, I think we've had a few hearings on this, more transparency from the executive level and the Department of Health as to what those numbers are would be helpful. But we have to really take a deep dive into that and learn how, you know, what the protocols need to be so that, you know, you right away in a health situation go in there and make sure that you're doing everything to keep the patient safe, isolating, you know, where needed, keeping sick staff outside. But also there definitely are issues that we've been talking about with nursing homes that predate this. So we can't lose sight of that either. There has been talk for years about how you deal with a lot of those issues, and we can't completely lose sight of that. We need to certainly be ready for the next major public health crisis as it relates to nursing homes, but you can't forget about all the issues we were talking about before this even started.
I want to say also that during the hearings, when we did the nursing home hearings, one of the things that came up again and again and again was the families are not considered part of a care plan for individuals in nursing homes. And too often, most often, families are actually a very critical part of that care plan. Many individuals, they go in 3-4 daily, times a week to help get their mom up and help them eat, or encourage them to go out and into the social area and have activities versus just staying in their room or in their beds. Or and when we removed the family because of the lockdowns, so many of these individuals, those that didn't get COVID, that weren't getting COVID, they started suffering secondary effects. They were having failure to thrive. They were suffering from neglect, depression, and they were falls. Like the family's eye, the watchful eye wasn't there anymore. And we really have to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again. You can't isolate a senior citizen who's living in a nursing home and completely isolate them from their family. It's often the one thing that helps them get going every day and make sure that they're safe and oversees the care that they're receiving. And when we remove that, we're seeing all kinds of, detrimental side effects. So I think we have a piece of legislation. I had sponsored a bill that I now have passed over to a majority member so that it actually, can move and get voted on with Ron Kim, that would allow each family member or resident of a nursing home to assign an essential person that would be authorized to come in and given access to them, even during a pandemic, the same way that staff is able to come and go, or the physicians are able to come and go, so would that essential person. They would have to follow all the PPE and safety guidelines that all the staff and physicians have to, but at least our seniors wouldn't be completely isolated. They'd have somebody that could still come in and watch over them and help them and encourage them.
You know, our senior population is the one absolute growing population we have in this country. We're living longer, which obviously means that there are more and more seniors. It's an opportunity for us to do many, many things, including creating employment opportunities. So we've got to recognize and put in place ways that a senior's life can be full with different activities, health. Certainly we have diseases like dementia, for example, that is growing, and we need to do research there and address that opportunity. I think Missy's 100% right. We've got to get to the point where we can train family members so they can assist and somebody can stay at home and have an enjoyable life. So I think as much as we saw a lot of challenges with senior care and housing and medical treatment and isolation during the pandemic, I think there's opportunity here to create a better life for our seniors, to create career opportunities for people that don't know what they want to do in life, to work with the seniors and do it in a way that's economical and fulfilling at the same time. We have to imagine really a better way. We've gone through hell this last year, and we've seen people suffer across the board, losses of jobs, not having food, you name it. Now we rethink where we're going, and let's make sure some of these things don't happen again, to make sure families are in a position where they can care for their people, and we recognize that care, and maybe we compensate them where they had to stop away from another employment, and we create new job opportunities to do that. And I think the more active a senior is, the more he or she can contribute to the lives of others by creating environments. So we need to look at, there's a bright side to everything. I think what we saw happen to seniors during this pandemic, from the problems we had from a medical standpoint to the lack of contact almost with the rest of the world, we can build on that and do a better thing. And I do think that issues like that, we do work across the lines. There's no Republican and Democratic solution. There's a human element here that we have to collectively work and make everybody's lives better. So I think that's stuff we have to work on.
And yeah, I agree completely with what has been mentioned. I spoke with so many constituents during the roughest time of COVID, and so many people were so concerned that they could not see their mother or father, and their loved one relied on a weekly visit, or at least a visit. Like some people visited their parent every day, and they were left out of the mix. So I really support the Missy and the Ron Kim's legislation, because I think you could assign one family member, and they could, it could be the one that can go in and make sure that their loved one is okay. And even before COVID, nursing homes don't always have a tremendous staff, so they don't always have people that can check in on people. And a lot of times your loved one might just be sitting in their room, so you want to go in there. And I know when my grandmother was in a nursing home, someone in our family went there a couple times a week, if not every day, just to check up on things. And now it was months that people might have been alone, scared. I know one person, their mother, they had phones for them, but the mother couldn't understand using the phone and seeing them on FaceTime. So there's a lot of solutions that need to happen. But I think assigning a family member to be able to be in the nursing home, I think, is a big help. And I also, a lot of the nursing homes in this area, AD 21, I have to say they really worked really hard throughout the pandemic, and they really did a lot to keep their seniors active, keep them safe. And I went to recent recent weeks, I've gone to a couple birthday celebrations and a couple of different events, and the people that care for them at these nursing homes, they often don't make a lot of money, but they give them amazing care, and they're like families at these places. So I think that's something else that needs to be recognized. A lot of these people took many risks to go to work, and a lot of them brought COVID back to their families from the nursing home. So there, we need to really consider what kind of protections these people have, what kind of money they're making, and see how we can improve things for them. Because I just know, I even know a nurse of mine that's a friend of mine. She worked very, she took a job, she wasn't a school nurse anymore because the schools went out, and she worked in a nursing home, and she would call me every day to tell me what was going on, what PPE they needed. And then I would call the governor's team and make sure they had PPE. And so it was a big issue, but like, she would call me up extremely upset of what was going on and the help they needed and the help they lacked. So I think this is an opportunity to really take a good look and see how else and what else we can do to, to benefit the people who live there and work there.
So we got just a few minutes left. I was hoping to pull in Bernard for some final thoughts. He's been attentively and loyally listening this whole time. I was curious if you just had any thoughts to help close things out.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, everyone, really. And thank you, Zach and City and State for moderating today's Nassau County State Legislative Forum. Thank you to all our state legislators for taking time out of their busy schedules to speak to us. And thank you especially to all our AARP members and volunteers and Nassau residents for joining us today. I hope you found the conversation informative. I certainly did. We are all in uncharted waters here. The decisions our elected officials make and the policies they enact are sure to have far-reaching effects during the remainder of the pandemic and after. I hope each of you feels better equipped and informed to make your own decisions and take your own actions. We will certainly inform and impact the decisions and actions taken here by our elected representatives. So again, thank you again, and have a great day.
I'm going to throw in just another round of thanks to all the lawmakers. Let's, keep the conversation going. I'm sure they would all be very happy to answer other questions from our audience. If you have any trouble reaching them, feel free to reach out to us at City and State, and we'll try to get them over to the lawmakers that can provide the best answers. And of course, subscribe to our First Read newsletter, and of course, the First Read coronavirus update that I, Zach Williams, staff writer, do every day at 2. I want to see more emails and press releases from all you lawmakers as well. And you won't have to wait too long before seeing us again at City and State at our great online events. We got another one coming up on November 24th called Nonprofit Checkup. That's a really good one, give you a sense of what's going on in the nonprofit sector. And we'll have lots of other events in the upcoming week as well. Just go to our website, City and State, NY, like New York.com. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all to the lawmakers. This was really great. And of course, to our great sponsor, AARP. I hope we can all do this type of event again sometime very soon. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Take care.